This morning, I released this story, and I will put the story in the live chat link in the live chat so you could read it if you haven't. That Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, or For the People Kamala Harris, is having a pretty big fundraiser next week. On March 20th, she's having it at the home of filmmaker J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams is, big filmmaker behind a lot of shows and movies. And Kamala Harris is having a lot of, when you have these fundraisers, you have co-chairs for the fundraisers. For this particular fundraiser, co-chairs start at $10,000. So talk about that for the people. Because you could just donate $10,000 to the politician of your choice. So co-chairs start at $10,000, and anybody else, just to get in the door, is $2,800, which is the new max amount. Before it was $2,700, now I believe it's $2,800. So what's interesting about that, if you look down the list of the people attending this fundraiser, which I'm going to show you in a minute, it's like a class reunion of Hillary Clinton's top donors. Hollywood producers, filmmakers, all that are at this fundraiser. It's all Hillary Clinton's top donors, which no crime in that. Hillary Clinton's top donors in the Hollywood industry are choosing Kamala Harris, apparently. But I like to go through the list for these fundraisers to see if there's anybody out of the ordinary, because I don't think Politico's going to go through the list. I don't think CNN's going to go through the list. I don't think the Young Turks is going to go through the list, if I'm being honest. I don't think corporate media and, frankly, independent outlets really are looking into who are giving money to these candidates. And in Senator Harris's example, or in her case, she has sworn off corporate PAC money, where not just with Kamala Harris, but a lot of these candidates, I believe we're starting to see that just because you swear off corporate PAC money doesn't mean you're not taking money from very questionable sources, which we're going to see. So I looked into her fundraiser that, again, is on March 20th. It's at the home of J.J. Abrams, the filmmaker. And I noticed that there was a gentleman on there who I didn't know who it was. He's not a Hollywood filmmaker. He's not a director. He's not a studio executive. So I looked him up. And pretty quickly, upon looking him up, his name is Shomik Duda. Sorry to Shomik if I'm mispronouncing it, but I believe that's how you pronounce it, Shomik Duda. Pretty quickly, the more I looked it up and investigated it, it looked like his company that he had co-founded, has ties to a global financial money laundering scandal. Now, to be clear, as the disclaimer, there's no evidence that Mr. Duda broke any laws. There's no evidence that he's under investigation. There's no evidence that he did anything untoward. However, there is oddities with his connection to this global money laundering scandal, and he chose to not put those oddities to rest because he chose to decline comment for the story, specifically about whether he was under investigation. So I'm going to read you the story. We're going to go through it. I'll start, stop, and all those things. But just before I get into the story, I want to make sure you understand what the 1MDB Malaysia scandal is, because that's the global money laundering scandal that he and his company that he co-founded might be connected to. So I interviewed Matt Taibbi a few months ago on this, but just a refresher course. This is from Matt Taibbi and Rolling Stone. So, headline: the Malaysia scandal is starting to look dire for Goldman Sachs. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to give you the basics. Goldman Sachs, which has survived and thrived despite countless scandals over the years, may have finally stepped in a pile of trouble too deep to escape. There's even a Donald Trump angle to this latest great financial mess. But the outlines of that subplot, in a case that has countless, remains vague. The bank itself is in the most immediate danger. The company's stock rallied Thursday to close at 165, stopping a five-day slide in which the firm lost almost 12% of its market value. The company is down 35% for the year, most of that coming in the past 3 months, as Goldman has been battered by headlines about the infamous 1MDB scandal. By the way, this was written in December of last year. Just before Christmas, Malaysian authorities filed criminal charges against Goldman Sachs, seeking a stunning $7.5 billion in reparations for the bank's role in the scandal. Singapore authorities also announced they were expanding their own 1MDB probe to include Goldman. In the 1MDB scheme, actors tied to former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak allegedly siphoned mountains of cash out of a state investment fund. The misrouted money went to lavish parties with celebrity guests like Alicia Keys, a $35 million jet, works by Monet and Van Gogh, property in New York, Los Angeles, and London, and ironically, the funding of the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, which was Leonardo DiCaprio's movie, which is a great movie, by the way. The cash for this mother of all bacchanals originally came from bonds issued by Goldman, which earned a whopping $600 million from the Malaysians. The bank charged prices for its bond insurance that analysts believe were suspiciously high, like a massage price that suggests you're probably getting more than a massage. By the way, Matt Taibbi is one of the funniest, best writers out there. And if Status Quo had the money, oh God, I would love to bring him in any capacity. So, GoFundMe. So, the rest of his article is primarily about Goldman Sachs, but I wanted to give you a backdrop about what the 1MDB scandal is. So essentially, to break it down, Malaysia, several years ago, tried to lure in investors for a fund that was going to build infrastructure in Malaysia, build agricultural projects in Malaysia, build up Malaysia. Obviously, Malaysia isn't like, America. So the fund, which had investors from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, some of the richest of the rich, the global plutocrats, the global elite. There were investors from a lot of different countries, invested money into this fund. Unfortunately, nothing got built. And as Matt Taibbi reported, you have money that's going into this fund from global investors that's going to, yachts, that's going to, fancy paintings, that's going to cars, that's going into the pockets of the Malaysian Prime Minister, that's going into the wallet of people connected to the Malaysian Prime Minister, that's going into production of Leonardo DiCaprio's film, going in a lot of places it shouldn't be going. Okay, so how is this connected to Kamala Harris? Well, it's not directly connected to Kamala Harris, but call me odd, call me old-fashioned. I think presidential candidates, both Democrat and Republican, should kind of know who they're taking tens of thousands of dollars from, or even more than that, because some of these donors are giving hundreds of thousands, and some of them are giving millions. So I think if you're going to have somebody come to your fundraiser as a co-host, because at these fundraisers you have co-chairs and co-hosts, I think you should know what their background is. And if you don't know their background, you should be ready to defend it if there's something controversial there. Because these are the people you're taking money from. We need to know your judgment. We need to know who you're tied to. We need to know if you're looking the other way at these donors who might have some unethical or criminal liability. So, like I said, I just looked in. I did something very radical. I just investigated it. I went to the Google machine and I looked, who are these donors going to her fundraiser in Hollywood next week? And this gentleman, Shomik Duda. So I'm going to read you some of this. I'm going to read you all of it and stop and start. And this is a story we broke this morning. Sitting in a distant third place in Democratic primary polls, California Senator Kamala Harris is set to have a $2,800 per person fundraiser with a who's who of Hollywood at the home of filmmaker J.J. Abrams and his producer wife, Katie McGrath, on March 20th. So that would be next week. My half birthday, by the way. Among the list of Hollywood producers, agents, and filmmakers listed as co-hosts for the fundraiser, many of whom donated to Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and former President Obama's campaigns, is Shomik Duda, a former investment banker who also served as a special assistant to the White House counsel for President Obama. There is the invitation. Sorry if it's small. What's really interesting about this is I found this invitation that, as you could see, $10,000 per person to be a co-chair, $2,800 per person to be a guest. So if you are listed as a hosted by So I don't know if the hosts are paying $10,000. I assume, yeah, the hosts are paying $10,000, but I could be wrong about that. But you got J.J. Abrams. You have a bunch of other people that are Hollywood producers, filmmakers, studio execs. There was one in there that was a public relations person, Shonda Rhimes, who is a big, successful executive producer of shows on ABC like Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder and all that. I like Shonda Rhimes a lot. So, Shomek Duda, I looked him up. What's interesting is this invitation was originally on the Malibu Democrat Club's website. So, it was up there. It had the list of people, and then it went away. So, all of a sudden, the invitation went away, and the event page showed up with an error. So I contacted the Malibu Democratic Club, and I said, why is it that this, luckily I had taken a screenshot for you Cub Scout reporters trying to get into journalism. Always take a screenshot, because they'll try to hide it. So I asked, why is it that this is no longer on your website? Was the event canceled? What happened here? So that's why I put in this note. The Malibu Democratic Club actually told Status Quo it was taken down. They took it down at the request of the Harris campaign for, quote, security reasons. So I found that interesting because the actual address, the actual invite that they took down doesn't say the address of the J.J. Abrams home. It doesn't give any information that would tell people where it is. So I don't particularly know what the security concern is. You could have a concern about journalists or activists knowing where it is because you don't want protesters outside. That's potentially why a campaign would ask a local Democratic club to take down the event, because maybe you don't want the image or you don't want it to be publicized that a candidate who, for the most part, is branding herself as for the people and is saying, I'm not taking corporate PAC money, you wouldn't want it advertised much, or have protesters or activists know where a who's who of very wealthy people are. And by the way, doesn't make Hollywood filmmakers and executives aren't bad people because them being wealthy doesn't make them bad. None of that. My point is, I don't know what exactly Kamala Harris's campaign meant by security concerns, because the invitation that they took down was, frankly, it didn't have the address. And for journalists, that's a problem too, because when you take it down, if I hadn't taken a screenshot, most journalists wouldn't even know who are the guests going, and that's a transparency issue too. And by the way, not that I actually expected journalists to look into it, that would be too difficult, but candidates shouldn't be hiding who they're doing fundraisers with or accepting money from. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statusquo.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statusquo.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.